Is everyone here?
Yes, that's the way it looks, like everyone is here.
All right, in that case, I'm going to call this meeting of the Richmond Rent Board to order at 5 o'clock.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the August 17th, 2022 regular meeting of the Richmond Rent Board. I want to go over a few reminders to the public before we begin. Members of the public were asked to submit requests to speak on any item on the agenda, including their name, phone number, and item for which they wish to make a public comment to Cynthia_Shaw at ci.richmond.ca.us by 3 p.m. today, as described on the first page of the agenda. If you wish to make a comment on any item on the agenda and have not emailed me your request, you must do so in accordance with the first page of the agenda before the item is called. Requests received via email during the meeting and after the deadline to submit comments will be accommodated as reasonably possible and will be limited to a maximum of 1 to 2 minutes, depending on the number of commenters, as more fully described in the Rent Board agenda procedures. This meeting is being conducted as a Zoom webinar. Members of the public are considered attendees and will be muted for the duration of the meeting unless called upon during public comment and unmuted by the webinar host. The city cannot guarantee that its network and or the site will be uninterrupted. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all statements made during this webinar will be on the public record. The first item on the agenda is pledge to the flag. Please join me in pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is the roll call. For the purpose of the recording, may I please get an audible roll call from Rent Board members and staff? Board Member Connor.
Present.
Board Member Johnson.
Present.
Board Member Vasilas.
Present.
Vice Chair Mashek.
Present.
Chair Finley.
Present.
Executive Director Nicholas Traylor.
Present.
Deputy Director Fred Tran.
Present.
General Counsel Charles Oceanuga.
Here.
And for the record, Palomar Sanchez is absent. The next item on the agenda is statement of conflict of interest. Are there any? Hearing none, the next item on the agenda is agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Do we have any changes from staff?
No changes from staff.
Thank you. Any changes from board members?
Okay. Hearing none, the next item on the agenda is public forum. 1 second, I just got an email. Let me just make sure. Okay, that's not for this one, that's for the next one. Okay, just want to make sure it wasn't for public forum. Tonight we have 4 speakers for public forum, and we had 2 emails, and I will forward those emails to you guys, and it also will be included in the board packet for next month. Each speaker should be allowed up to 2 minutes to address the board. When your name is called, please wait until the webinar host lets you know that you have been unmuted. For the record, please state your name and your residence is optional. Please terminate your address to the board when your time expires. We ask that you keep your comments respectful and appropriate. You will be muted when your time expires. Fred, can I share my screen for the timer real quick? And the first speaker is Cordell Hindler. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay.
Yes, can you hear me, Cynthia?
Yes, we can. You can go ahead.
Yeah. Sure. So good evening, Chair Finley, board members. My name is Cordell Handler and I'm a Richmond resident. So I would like to invite the Rent Board to the Richmond Rotary Club weekly meeting on this coming Friday at 12:30 at the Richmond Country Club. Tickets are only $25 and that includes lunch. So we will have the representatives from the Richmond Main Street Initiative who will be talking to us about seeds of change. So it should be an interesting presentation. So that being said, so I looked at the consent calendar and I approved F1 through F4, but F5, I'm gonna reiterate my comments. So I attended the El Cerrito City Council meeting yesterday evening, and it was a pretty good turnout. There was about 20 people in the room. So I'm thinking that if the city council can do a hybrid meeting, I'm thinking that the rent board should follow that same pattern, because you would have more participation from, like in the chambers, as well as people can call in. So I'm asking that the rent board, like, to be like other cities, like have a hybrid meeting, because chances are you will have more participation if you have those elements established. So that's all I have.
Thanks. Oops, sorry. The next speaker is Elisa Stevens.
I don't see Elisa. I see a and let's see, and Karen, but I don't see Elisa on the attendee list.
Okay. All right, so maybe she's not here. Okay. All right. The next speaker is Elda Fontano.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Elda.
Hello?
Yes, we
Oh,
can.
okay. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Elda Fontano. I'm a resident here at Heritage Park, affordable housing for senior citizens. And my call is about the $60 increase that has gone up on our rent. Now, I make less than $2,400 a month. It was hard enough paying $1,203. Now they want to go up $60, which is going to be $1,263. That's a lot of money. And the cap should never be over 3% for a senior citizen. I don't know what this is. I guess 5% or something, but I know this is too much. I can't afford it. I don't qualify for housing or anything like that. And I don't just speak for myself, but a lot of others in the same situation as me. And I'm asking that you guys please work with us and help us to have this decrease from 60 to 3%, whatever that cap would be. I would really appreciate it. I know you guys can do it. And we really need your help, effective immediately, because I can't afford $60. Over half of my money is in rent. I still have to eat. I still have to pay PG&E, and I'll take care of other personal needs. I'm crippled. I can't, there's just some things I just can't do. And I need as much money as possible. Otherwise, I'm gonna end up in the street. And a lot of us will be. Like I said, housing, too much for housing. I don't understand why. So I have to pay the full rent. That is my, what I'm asking, to this decrease to take place immediately down to 3%, and that cap never be over 3% for senior citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Elda. The next speaker is Lauren Luber.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
This is Laureen Lober, and I'm a resident of Richmond at the Heritage Park at Hilltop Apartments. We recently received rent increase notices of 5.2% that are going to be effective in October of 2022. Although USA Properties Fund, the property owner, is in compliance with the Consumer Price Index rent increase, the $63 monthly increase that equals $756 annually will be a burden to seniors on fixed incomes and tight budgets. Routine car maintenance is over $1,000. Keeping cable and internet may not be doable when paying monthly living expenses is a struggle. USA Properties Fund and their investors are profiting from this LIHTC tax credit investment property. Rents are not affordable and fair market rent is not fair at Heritage Park. Other LIHTC developers in our area, they have rents that are truly affordable. A one-bedroom apartment is $750 compared to Heritage Park at $1,500. Our amenities were reduced or discontinued before and during the COVID pandemic. Garbage dumpsters and bins that are a necessity and that we're paying for have been removed from the property. The overflowing garbage has been an issue for years. It's a serious public health and safety issue. Why are we paying more when we're getting less? Why are corporate giants being rewarded and vulnerable seniors' needs are being ignored? We really need you to hear our pleas. This is the reality here that we're living with. We're out of a lot of options, and we do need your help. And I'm asking you to please listen and also read the document, my letter that I sent you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last speaker. And like I mentioned earlier, for the record, we have two emails, one of them by Ms. Lorraine Lober, and it will be included in the I will forward it to you and it'll be included in next month's agenda packet. The next item on the agenda is to approve the consent calendar.
Or do we have any items on the consent calendar that you wish to change?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. May we have a second, please?
I'll second.
Oh.
Board Member
All right.
Vassie,
Thank you. May we have a motion?
a vote.
Excuse me, may we have a vote? We just did that.
Okay. It's okay.
1,000 miles away.
It's all right. Board Member Connor,
Yes.
Board Member Johnson,
Yes.
Board Member Vasilas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mashek,
Yes.
and Chair Finley.
Yes.
Motion passes to approve the consent calendar unanimously. The next item on the agenda is item G1 under contracts. Okay. Item G1 is to approve amendments to the contract for community legal services with Bay Area Legal Aid, increasing the contract amount by $62,500 for fiscal year 2022 through 23, modifying the term to commence on September 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, and additions, clarifications, and corrections made to the contract service plan and goals. There are no speakers on this item.
All righty. Do we have a staff report, please?
I will be introducing Adam Poe. Adam Poe is the managing attorney for Bay Area Legal Aid, and he'll be doing a short presentation or just discussing their services with the board. Myself and Monica Becanano, who is one of our program managers, who also worked on the contract, will be available for questions, as well, of course, as Charles Ocean, our general counsel. So Adam, take it away.
Well, good afternoon to everyone. I'm Adam Poe. As Nick mentioned, I'm the managing attorney at Bay Area Legal Aid. I first want to say I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about our work with you all. I hope it becomes a recurring theme and opportunity in the coming months. I also want to thank Nick and the staff for working with us to get with the contract in its present form. We think that it really will provide us with the opportunity and support to continue serving low-income Richmond residents who are experiencing housing distress, whether that be from from rent increases, like some of the callers mentioned, and those that are being threatened with eviction and harassment as well. I could talk a little bit kind of historically about the way our clinics have and our work generally has operated, if that would be helpful. And then I could also talk a little bit prospectively about our plans for kind of the near and intermediate future. And I'm also, if anyone has any questions, please interrupt me or interject them. I guess I'd start by sort of acknowledging the challenges of the last couple years, and I know that's not unique to our organization, given public health crisis and the need that it the challenges that it posed in terms of our service delivery and the way we've done our work historically. Before COVID, we operated a weekly clinic in Richmond that was a walk-in model, in person, of course, and we would serve virtually anyone who came to the clinic through that made the effort to make the trip, so long as they, we're serving Richmond residents as a priority, and that includes landlords and tenants, mostly tenants, but occasionally landlords as well. Obviously, with COVID, that model doesn't work, and we were able to pivot to a remote model, and that we think really proud of it. It obviously, a couple of things, it's appointment based, and we're serving a smaller number of folks, largely speaking. We, I think performed, met all the contractual obligations, obviously, but compared to our pre-COVID numbers, they're significantly lower. So that's something I guess to preview. I mean, we're really planning to return to an in-person clinic model in the near future. We feel like that's going to, generally speaking, it's going to have a big impact on the number of Richmond residents that we're able to serve. And the timing is I think really important too, is some of the, Richmond still has a really meaningful eviction moratorium for now, but we're really feeling compelled to increase the number of folks that we're serving, and that comes along with an in-person clinic. So that's a goal of mine and a goal of our organization, and we're moving in that direction as quickly as we can. We're also really happy to be working alongside the rent program staff and alongside EDC. We feel like it is a really thoughtful system for folks seeking assistance with their housing needs. And we're really looking forward to strengthening and deepening those working relationships. And what I mean by that is, when we're all working in concert together, we're all working more efficiently, and we're really ultimately about improving outcomes for folks who come seeking help. The rent program staff, we're working with them to, timely respond to the referrals that they send us. Some of those folks will end up going to the clinic, and some that we'll take on for representation. Some of the cases we don't take on for representation, maybe EDC is going to take on. And this is all about, really working together seamlessly and timely, and being in the right position. And COVID obviously disrupted that to some extent. But I think we're all looking forward to increasing the numbers and again, ultimately, like serving more folks and efficiently. I guess I would add, we're really thankful for the support and being able to serve the Richmond community. We even in the last, I guess I could refer, and I apologize for not mentioning this earlier. We put together, I don't know if I'd call it a report, but a summary of the relevant data in terms of the folks we've served through clinics, folks that we've taken on as cases. It's on page 49 of the agenda request. It's the form of a letter addressed to Nick. So there's plenty of data, and again, I'm proud of the work performed under the contract. We obviously are looking forward to improving our services, and of course, are open to all of your input and feedback on that. That's the goal of mine, is to be doing the highest quality work and being responsive to you all. So again, in looking at the numbers tell a story. We always, it's in addition, we're talking about our neighbors and our community members, and we're really fortunate to have been able to be in a position to receive referrals from our community partners, including the rent program, to triage those individuals that are facing eviction, for example, in our clinics or through other means. There are some, just a handful of client stories that we thought might be of interest to you all. These are folks, our neighbors, our Richmond neighbors, who were facing some sort of threat to their housing, whether it be harassment, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be eviction notices for various reasons. We've been able to intervene, and our goal is to keep folks in their homes. Sometimes that's not possible, but if someone is in a position where they have no choice but to move, we're really trying to extend that time, get them sufficient time so that they don't end up in the homeless system of care. And that's of course, one of the really important values of having legal services. Even since we wrote this, which was a month or so ago, we had an individual come through our clinic with an eviction notice that didn't include the requisite language under the Richmond moratorium. And we were able to intervene in that case, write a motion and get the eviction dismissed. And ultimately she may have to move. But again, we feel like really proud and fortunate to be in the position of enforcing Richmond policy and ordinance. That's very important to us, and we know it's important to you too. So I guess I'll stop there before, and I don't know if there's any questions about the information to date and our kind of work up until now, or about the contract and sort of the shape of it prospectively.
Are there any questions? I don't have a question, Mr. Poe, but I do want to thank you for your letter. I don't see a date on it, so I can't refer to it, but I did read it and found it to be illuminating and helpful in the review of this contract. So thank you very much.
Chair Finley, Member Connor has her hand
up. Yes, Ms. Connor.
Thank you, Chair Finley, and thank you, Mr. Poe, for your insight. I'm sure Mr. Traylor knows what my questions are going to be, so I think I'll just direct them to him and cut to the chase. My challenge is not with the services that are being provided by this organization. The difficulty that I have is they're not being provided to property owners who might also be in need. And so I want to re-emphasize the importance that I think needs to be placed on locating a service provider that can provide services, legal services to our property owners, as well as to other Richmond residents. And that's something that we haven't been able to do. And I know that you're looking, but this really seems that the legal aid services are maybe somewhat duplicative of what's already being offered by EDC. And so I just want to hear some feedback from you about, have we yet had any luck identifying another organization who can do more with relation to providing services to property owners? And I didn't see in the agenda packet kind of a summary that might have touched on services provided to property owners. So maybe there's some clarity from Mr. Poe that I can get around that.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Connor. So first of all, one of the reasons that we had to spend a lot of time and energy working on revising the contract was to include more language and more emphasis on the need for Bay Legal, at least through the legal clinics, to provide services for Richmond landlords. So it's just much more specific. In the previous contract, it said Richmond residents and didn't specifically lay out exactly that Richmond rental property owners would be served by the legal clinic as well, even though it was kind of presumed. We are looking at other organizations that might be able to assist landlords in Richmond. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to discuss it, because it's still, we're still having discussions and negotiations with this other organization, and I don't really want to necessarily put them on Front Street, so to say. Anyways, so yes, it is, in fact, in our many discussions with Bay Legal, I can tell you that Adam heard me emphasize again and again the need to open up the legal clinics, focus the legal clinics on not just serving Richmond tenants, but also serving Richmond rental property owners who need some form of legal assistance or legal advice, that not legal representation, but similar to the type of legal feedback or legal advice that you could receive if you went to lawyers in the library or something similar to that. But in this particular case, Richmond landlords would be able to go to the legal clinic and ask questions, obviously pertaining to landlord-tenant issues. So yes, I understand the concerns, Board Member Connor, and we tried our best to amend the contract long-term to address that issue, at least with Bay Legal. And I also want to say that I really appreciate that Bay Legal has been open to establishing a service that's open to everyone in Richmond, all Richmond community members and landlords. And I say that because Bay Legal is generally focuses on helping the lowest income members of our society, the most vulnerable members of our society. But I think they recognize, and we recognize, that in order to protect the most vulnerable in our city, it's important that both landlords and tenants are provided services, or provided education and some legal services, frankly, to in many cases avoid unnecessary legal disputes, or at least stopping them before they cause the damage that they potentially can. So I don't know, that kind of answers your question, long-winded way of answering your question, but yes, we are working on it. We are reaching out to other organizations, but in terms of Bay Legal, we're really happy that they have focused, that they're willing to focus a good part of our contract on the legal clinic and opening it up to Richmond landlords and tenants.
Mr. Traylor, if you would be good enough to get a little closer to your microphone, we can hear you, but it is difficult. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Ms. Shaw, I'm not getting a full screen. Does anyone else have their hand up? Okay.
I don't see anyone else with their hand up.
All right, thank you. Ms. Connor, anything further you want to comment on this issue?
Well, yes, since no one else has their hand up, I do have another question.
All right.
I'm curious about the distinction between the clinics, not clinics, I apologize. The classes, I'm trying to think of a word that would better capture what I'm thinking, but I know that the staff does presentations to try to share information about the Richmond Rent Board rules and regulations and laws. And I know that those are posted on the board's website and are available to the public. How are those different than what Bay Area Legal Aid would be providing?
So Bay Area Legal Aid does not necessarily hold workshops during their clinics. They're there to answer legal questions or provide legal services, legal advice, to assist with filing of paperwork, to ask, to provide referrals to folks who come in with various situations. So it's more like lawyers in the library. It's more like it's a legal clinic. It's not really an educational clinic per se. It's more of a legal services clinic. So you go in there, you have a legal question that frankly, the rent program staff cannot get into. We can't go that far as to provide legal advice to either landlords or tenants. So that's part of the reason why we have this legal clinic, is so that there can be a place, a starting point when it comes to legal issues for landlords and tenants.
Hey, and I could expound on that a little bit in terms of our approach to the clinic. What we're trying to do is serve, again, the very low income and vulnerable Richmond residents in a both wide and deep kind of approach. Wide meaning the clinic is generally the first point of entry. And again, we're, as Nick said, we're able to provide legal information, assist with different forms and documents, talk about process, give folks a point in the right direction. And sometimes that's where that relationship ends. We then try to, and inevitably will, take on a good number of the folks that come through the clinic for representation. And that can be for a wide range of landlord-tenant issues, fair housing, discrimination, habitability, harassment, all of which are folks that we've served under this contract that came through our clinics that are now our clients that we're representing. We also will refer a good number of those folks to Eviction Defense Center for unlawful detainer defense, which we also do in some cases. But there is a good number of folks that EDC won't serve, and that's what I meant when I said earlier. I talked about a system of care for folks who are matriculating from the rent program to our clinics, or sometimes from other community partners or from our own legal advice line, which we leverage heavily for Richmond residents. Through some extended service. A lot of that stays with us. Some of that will go to EDC as well. I think it's a really effective and efficient way to operate. And that's sort of, I'm trying to respond to the concern about duplicative services. This really is meant to operate as a cohesive system.
Mr. Vassilas.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So the measurement of success portion of the contract, is that newer? Because I remember that wasn't included, I think, the last time around.
Yes. One of the things that we changed or we amended was we tightened up the collection of data, asking for more summaries of the participants served, asking for more specific information about the duration of time provided, to provide those services for each client or case. Monica, you might have some additional feedback about that. Do you have any additional thoughts on that. You there, Monica?
Yeah, I'm here. Hello,
And
everybody.
by the way, Monica is our senior management analyst. She supervises our housing counselors and our registration staff.
Hello, everyone. So for the measurements, you will see some new additions in that section, specifically on how the reports will be done by Bay Legal. Specifically the data sets and the measurements, how not necessarily based on success, more so detailed reports as to, you know, what they did for a certain eligible participant, the minutes to hours, duration they spent with that person. Those types of deliverables, as we understand, not all cases are considered a win, and that's not necessarily a successful case, right? We more so want to document it as to, you know, the time spent, the information given, services done by Bay Legal, and whether or not that satisfied those requirements. And as you can see there as well, in the measurements, we have more data required by Bay Legal in their monthly reports.
And we'll be presented with that data monthly then, you just said?
Right. Yes,
Okay.
those would be monthly reports. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also quickly add, I mean, we welcome the opportunity to provide more information. We understand the we want to be, you know, accountable and transparent about our work, and we're an effort to move towards that. It's also the new direction is made in part possible. We have a new database system that's going to let us run reports and new and interesting ways that we didn't have capacity to do before. We had all the data, but we couldn't easily report it. So again, it's trying to modernize and present as much information we can to you all.
All right. Any other questions or input from board members? Ms. Shaw, any input from you? Anybody hand up that I don't see?
No hands up right now.
Oh, all right, very good. I understand that we have no speakers for this item. Is that still correct?
That's correct. No speakers for this item.
All righty. Then I must ask the board members, is there any other issues that you might wish to discuss regarding this? If so, please ask. If not, I would entertain a motion. Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we accept the contract as the amended contract as proposed.
Thank you, Ms. Mishek. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, where did that come from?
Board Member Johnson.
Ah, Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry again. I'm working with a partial screen. My apologies. We have a motion and a second. May we have a vote, please?
Sure. Board Member Connor.
No.
Board Member Johnson.
Yes.
Board Member Vasilas.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mishek.
Yes.
And Chair Finley.
Yes.
Motion passes to approve Bay Legal contract with Board Member Connor voting no.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item H1 under Rent Board as a whole. Item H1 is to approve receipt of and authorize use of the $10,000 rent relief partner grant for partnering in the establishment of Richmond Rent Assistant Program. Program. There are no speakers on this item.
Thank you. May we hear the staff report, please?
Yes. Chair Finley and members of the Rent Board, Nicholas Traylor. I'll be doing the presentation today as soon as it gets brought up. You got the presenter's view. All right, as I mentioned, this is a presentation regarding authorization, board authorization to receive the $10,000 rent relief partner grant that we received. Let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So the Richmond Rent Program has received a check for $10,000 for participating in the creation and development of Richmond's rent assistance program. Prior to depositing and using these funds, the Richmond Rent Board, which oversees the Richmond Rent Program's budget and finances, must authorize receipt and use of the $10,000 rent relief partnership grant. Next slide. So prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the rent program organized a series of meetings with the city of Richmond, past rent board members, and several city council members to discuss the creation of a rent assistance program that would be dedicated to Richmond tenants and landlords. This was based on our impetus to have these meetings and start discussing the creation of a rent assistance program. It was based on the high percentage of our counseling cases that revolved around non-payment of rent evictions in Richmond. It was clear from this high percentage of cases revolving around non-payment of rent that there was an ongoing demand for rent assistance even prior to the pandemic. Rent assistance resources at the time were not only scarce, but they were spread out among many local organizations, each competing for whatever existing rent assistance funds that were out there. So these initial meetings spurred discussions about the need for a permanent rent assistance program for Richmond and how to create such a program. So initially, this working group included modeling the program similar to Oakland's Keep Oakland House program, which is a collaboration between the city of Oakland, various corporations, foundations, local nonprofits, and philanthropic organizations. When the COVID-19 pandemic began in the spring of 2020, the urgency to create a rent assistance program ramped up, resulting in the rent program spearheading the effort to create a permanent rent assistance program for the city of Richmond. Next slide, please. So that spring, and spring of 2020, the rent program organized a meeting with the city of Richmond's community development department, specifically Lena Velasco and her team, to urgently address the anticipated increase in demand for rent assistance services in Richmond and to begin the process of building out a permanent rent assistance program. And keep in mind that this is prior to the state of California even coming up with any emergency rent assistance program or funds. So rent program staff and community development staff decided that it was a good idea for us to invite some local nonprofits, the local nonprofits that were already administering rent assistance services to our ongoing meeting in order to learn not only from their expertise, but to include them in the effort to build out a permanent rent assistance program. Those nonprofits included Seasons of Sharing, Spark Point, Shelter Inc., the West Contra Costa County Ed Fund, Richmond Community Foundation, and Catholic Charities. The coalition, after several months of meeting, the coalition of nonprofits grew to include the Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services, the Office of Mayor Tom Butt, who made one of the first contributions to the fund, and Richmond Land, which is a Land Trust nonprofit, and the Community Housing Development Corporation. We have been meeting weekly to strategize efforts and raise money ever since essentially since the spring or summer of 2020. And the coalition has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and integrated itself into the Richmond Rapid Response Fund. So far to date, the Richmond Rapid Response Fund, acting as the larger governing entity for the rent assistance program, has dispersed over $385,000 in rent assistance to 77 Richmond renters and landlords.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the sound is going in and out.
Oh God, I gotta fix that. Let me see, maybe. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get closer to the microphone. And maybe I'll turn off my camera so you don't see me getting really close. All right, next slide, please. After initially being led by the rent program in May of 2021, the West Contra Costa Ed Fund began overseeing the program's development. This transition really made sense because the West Contra Costa Ed Fund was overseeing the Richmond Rapid Response Fund, which is a city-sponsored program that provides financial relief to Richmond residents impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. In July of 2021, the West Contra Costa County Ed Fund hired Jessica Trevina, program officer, to organize the rent assistance program's governing structure, to continue the program's development, and to seek additional funding. And efforts are currently underway to transform the current program into a permanent city-sponsored rent assistance program that would be separate from the Richmond Rapid Response Fund. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the funds is to compensate, the purpose of the $10,000 grant is to compensate the rent program for its assistance and participation in the establishment of Richmond's rent assistance program. Next slide. In terms of any limitations on the use of funds, the $10,000 is a general operating grant to fund administration of the program or other activities related to the rent program, excluding lobbying. And the rent board may direct staff to use the $10,000 in rent relief partner funds towards a specific activity or to simply supplement the rent program budget. And next slide. So the recommended action for tonight is to approve receipt of and authorize use of the $10,000 rent relief partner grant for partnering in the establishment of Richmond's rent assistance program. And I'm ready to take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Mr. Trailer, a question, if I may. Tonight, we're approving the receipt of and authorizing the use of. When are we going to have a discussion about what sorts of areas within our framework would staff be recommending to the board to actually use these monies? When does that come in this process?
The board can decide tonight or begin discussions tonight as to how the $10,000 could be spent. It could also be to direct staff to come up with some concepts around how to spend the money. Alternatively, it could be simply deposited into a special fund, which is where it's going to go, similar to the $5,000 grant we received before. It's a special line item in our budget, and frankly, it's appropriate to keep it either for a specific purpose or for general use, because our staff are continuing to work with the rent assistance group to build out the program, and our staff is also doing policy research around rent assistance programs to help build out the 2.0 version of the permanent rent relief program. So essentially, the board can direct us to use it a certain way, or simply allow us to deposit it and to help compensate for the work that we have done and continue to do around building out this program.
Am I clear then in saying that we would have the opportunity, if we chose to use it, to approve the receipt of the funds, but not to authorize the use of the funds until further information is given to us about possible uses for these monies?
Essentially, what I'm saying is tonight the board simply has to, or would approve receipt and allow us to use the funds to pay for staff, to continue the work that we're doing to build out the permanent rent relief program. Alternatively, if the board wanted to, they could direct staff to use those monies for a specific purpose. Staff at this point does not have any recommendation about using the $10,000 for any specific purpose. I think it's appropriate that the purpose of the grant, which was provided to each of the partners that were mentioned, is to take into consideration the amount of time and effort that has been put in, meeting weekly or bi-weekly, to help build out this program.
Chair Finley, if I may, perhaps this might help. You can just simply approve the receipt of the funds and direct staff to come back at the next meeting to offer the board some specific use of the funds.
I'm just posing a question. I want to hear from the rest of the board before we take anything, but thank you, Mr. Oshanuga. That gives us an opportunity, because this organization that you created, I think we knew about it, but we didn't know how successful you were going to be. I'm delighted that you're getting this kind of recognition. And I'd like to see how you're planning for the growth of the program. So that's what I'm really looking for.
Yes, I'd be happy if the board directs us to. I can bring back a report on our plans to build out this program and how.
Okay.
Planning.
All righty. Now let's open it up to the rest of the board members. Any hands up? Any comments? I believe I see Ms. Mishek.
Yes, thank you. I just want to thank the rent staff for their hard work on this throughout the pandemic. This is really incredible. I know that, I mean, as we heard from a couple public speakers, even, even $50 makes a huge difference to a lot of people. So I just want to thank you so much for your hard work. This is really exciting.
Thank you. Ms. Connor.
Thank you. I think I just wanted to echo Vice Chair Mishek's gratitude to the staff for all of their work. It is incredible when you're acknowledged for your expertise, and the Richmond Rent Board is kind of the young kid in town. So to see this kind of progress is really exciting, and to be a part of it, very small part, not a part of this at all, but a part of the board is very rewarding for me. If the board elects to ask staff to come back with a recommendation, I think that this is money we've already spent on staff because the work is in the past, and so they've been paid for that. So I'm hearing really clearly about what the next steps are, what the expectations are from the Richmond organization that's taking the lead on this, so that we can decide how best to direct these funds would be super important to know. And then I'm curious, and I'm not sure who knows the answer to this, I do not, whether the receipt of those funds require us to consider them as part of any other amounts that come in, and we need to segregate part of that towards our reserve fund. So just that may be part of the board's instruction to staff, but I just want to be clear that in handling the money, we're directing it in the right buckets.
Ms. Connor, your hand is still up. Is there more, or is it just, okay.
It was a leftover, I apologize.
Cynthia, is there anybody else that would like to chat on this that I'm not seeing?
I don't see any more hands up.
All righty. And please understand that my statement was not meant to cast any concern about the responsibility of how this has happened and how it will continue. But oversight is one of our responsibilities. And again, I'm very proud of what you've done and very proud of the way it has incorporated us into the program. So thank you. But oversight is just one of those things. Ms. Johnson.
Oh, yes, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I also am grateful for the rent program staff because as we can see that and hear that there's a huge need out there for rental assistance. And I just wish there was more we could do to stop the, I don't know what the right word is, this hemorrhaging, I guess, I don't know. But the rent increases that keep going every single year. And then people, it's just harder and harder for people to afford the rent. And people are saying they still have other bills they have to pay. So it will be, it'll go for a good use. So thank you.
All righty. Anyone else? Ms. Shaw, I believe you said that there were no speakers on this item. Is that still correct?
That is still correct. No speakers on this item.
All righty. Well, unless someone else, any board members, any staff members, I would certainly entertain a motion.
Don't make me do it, everybody. I refuse.
Well, I can go ahead and move that we approve the receipt of and authorize the use of the $10,000 rent relief grant.
I believe that motion was made by Ms. Johnson. Is that correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, doke. May I have a second, please?
I'll second. This is Vice Chair Mishik.
Thank you. Thank you. May we have a vote, please?
I have a question. I thought that we needed to direct staff how to use the funds. So am I misunderstanding your motion, Board Member Johnson?
No, I apologize. So I moved that we receive the money and direct staff to come back with uses for the money. Am I wording that right?
I understand now. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Mr. Oshinugu, should we accept that as a friendly amendment to the motion?
No, why don't we just withdraw the original motion and Board Member Johnson can just repeat exactly what she just said and see if we can get a second.
All righty.
Okay.
So the maker of the motion will have to withdraw it. I can't do that.
Yes.
Ms.
Okay,
Johnson,
so I withdraw that motion. And again, I move that we approve the receipt of the $10,000 rent relief partner grant and direct staff to come back with recommendations for uses of the money.
Okay. Fine. Ms. Mishek, will you second that motion?
Yes, I second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. May we have a vote, please?
Yes, Board Member Connor?
Yes.
Board Member Johnson?
Yes.
Board Member Vasilos?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mishek?
Yes.
And Chair Finley?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous. All right. We're on to item H2. Item H2. Let's see, is Heather on? Here she is. Okay. Item H2 is to recommend the city council consider the eviction moratorium and 1, terminate the moratorium, 2, amend the moratorium to allow a property owner to evict a tenant so that the owner may move into the property, or 3, make no changes. There are 13 speakers on this item.
Okey dokey. I believe then that there is a time frame that comes into play with 13 speakers. Is that correct, Ms. Shaw?
Yes, yes, there are. So they're limited to 1.5 minutes, if it's more than 6. But the thing is, I believe, I'm not sure, it's possible. I was just emailing the person that sent a lot of the names to me, that some of them speak Spanish. So if they speak Spanish, they are allowed additional time because it'll be interpreted. So I just have to, I was trying to clarify that. I think one of the persons who sent me a lot of the names is on the line, and I was emailing with her. I haven't received a response.
So then in that case, for someone who does need a translator, we would be allowing them 3 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, as long as everyone understands that. Fine, thank you. Call the first speaker, please.
Oh, you want to go?
No, let's go back and hear the issue.
Okay.
We've got to start somewhere else.
Okay.
Right, am I presenting this issue? I think I am. So this issue comes about from Councilmember Bates. He's been approached by a constituent asking to redo the moratorium eviction to allow for owner move-ins or relatives of owners move-ins. And before he presents this item to the City Council, he was seeking the Rent Board's consideration and recommendation for the item. As
Ms. McLaughlin, I'm sorry. What is your position in relationship to this?
I am so sorry. For those of you who haven't met me before, I am Heather McLaughlin, the interim senior assistant city attorney over at the city attorney's office.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had that in my practice speech and everything, and I totally forgot.
Please continue.
Yes. So the council member would like the recommendation of the Rent Board. As we see it, there's probably at least 3 options. Keep the ordinance as it is, change the ordinance to allow for owner move-ins, or just keep the ordinance as is, or any of the varieties along the continuum. So currently the moratorium does not allow an exception for owner move-ins. That's the short summary of the idea. I don't have any statistics or any details on how many people this affects, of course, since it's just come up. But we do know that there's at least one person who is impacted by it. Any questions?
So there's no way in the world that we can possibly insert ourselves and actually change anything in documents that have nothing to do with the Rent Board. We weren't a creator, we weren't an amender, we weren't a signer. So what you're asking for is, if we had our druthers, what would we like you to do? Is that what's happening here?
Yes,
a recommendation.
Right, a recommendation from the board to the city council saying, yes, do something, don't do something, or do something in between.
Or we say that we don't feel that it is our place to take this. We have no standing on this issue.
Yes, that's true.
And therefore
too.
no recommendation.
That could be an option as well.
All righty, thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. McLaughlin from our board members or from staff? Let's start with staff first. Staff, do you have any questions for Ms. McLaughlin?
I don't have any questions.
A little closer, please.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Sure. I don't have any questions, but I do think that the question about whether the eviction moratorium should be maintained, amended, or terminated really should first consider whether or not Richmond's local emergency order should be maintained, amended, or rescinded. My understanding is the general purpose of the eviction moratorium was to protect the public's health by preventing displacement and homelessness, thereby reducing the transmission of COVID-19. and also in response to the local emergency declared by the city of Richmond. The purpose was also to promote the stability and the health and safety of residential tenants.
Nick, I'm sorry, Chair Finley, if I can just.
Please, go ahead.
Of course.
I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you, and I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
The public probably is having the same. No, I'm just gonna ask that perhaps you, I don't know, get closer to the mic or speak louder. You're going in and out. It's really hard.
Okay, let me go ahead and turn my video off so I can just get closer. All right. So essentially what I was saying is that the question really then is whether the emergency order, whether that the decision to maintain the emergency order or amend it or terminate it is really a decision that should appropriately be posed to the city council and city. So, I mean, I'm assuming that the city's decision to maintain, amend, or continue, or excuse me, terminate the moratorium would be related to data on the spread of the COVID-19 virus and whether or not the spread of the virus would be impacted by allowing more evictions to take place. So, I mean, I think the board can weigh in. The board doesn't have to weigh in terms of this request. The board can remain neutral as well. Yeah. So that's just my initial feedback. But of course, I'm happy to answer any questions, and hopefully you can hear me now.
It is much better, Mr. Traylor.
Great.
All right, I see your hand is up, Mr. Vasilis.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful if we could just tell the board, I know it was emailed to us and the public perhaps, of which evictions are prevented with the urgency order that's in place right now.
So under the current urgency order, 5 out of the 8 just causes are currently prohibited. So doing a breach of lease is prohibited unless there's a health and safety threat related to a nuisance. Failure to give access is currently prohibited. Temporary eviction for the landlord to make substantial repairs is currently prohibited, as well as owner move-ins and temporary tenancies. Temporary tenancies as well. The types of evictions that are allowed under the urgency ordinance are withdrawal from the rental market, or an Ellis Act eviction, which is a state law, and also codified in our regulations. Nuisance, where there's a threat to the health and safety of occupants or the owner, or of course, non-payment of rent. So those are the 3 that are currently allowed under the urgency ordinance.
And do we have any data on how many of these evictions that are now prevented? How many in a normal year we typically have of owner move-in and the other types of evictions?
We do have numbers on the total number of OMIs prior to the pandemic. These are OMIs that have been owner move-ins where we have been notified by the landlord that they're performing an owner move-in. During the pandemic, of course, the number of OMI evictions has been artificially low because the moratorium prevents those evictions from occurring. I guess the question, I think the proper question is whether or not the allowing owner move-in evictions to occur at this time would lead to displacement that is likely to increase COVID-19 infection rate. And just as a side note, we do regularly counsel tenants who receive notices to vacate for owner move-in, even during the urgency ordinance, or sometimes they receive notices that the landlord wants to sell the property. In other words, despite the moratorium, there are still landlords who are trying to perform owner move-in evictions And so presumably if the moratorium went away, there would be an uptick of owner move-ins.
I mean, if you don't have it readily available off the top of your head, how many would you say you think in a typical year for owner move-ins in particular?
Boy, I don't want to.
Less than 20 or?
Yeah, less than 20 probably, definitely. They're not definitely around that number or less.
But compared to the allowable evictions, it's a very, very much smaller number.
It is. It's just, you know, the vast majority of terminations of tenancy are for non-payment of rent. Coming in second place is nuisance or breach of lease. So owner move-ins are pretty, you know, there's not a whole lot of them generally, relatively speaking. But you know, they do occur, and obviously when they do occur, they do have an impact.
Mr. Vasilis, anything further with you?
I do, but not right now. Maybe I'll ask later. I'll let Mrs. Johnson speak.
Yeah, and also, sorry, Board Member Vasilis, I'd be happy to get that information and have it prepared after this board meeting for the next board meeting.
We will certainly give you another chance to chat about this. In the meantime, let us go to Board Member Johnson.
So, yeah, I'm grateful that even though the final decisions with the city council, but we can make our suggestions or recommendations. So I just think that the first two options are completely ridiculous. You know, there already was a housing crisis and everybody knows it was made worse by the pandemic. So I would just suggest the third option, you know, making no changes at all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mishek.
I just a point of clarification. Are we in the asking questions phase or are we in the discussion phase?
In my mind, they're actually both. But go ahead, ask any questions, and then
Oh no!
Make a statement.
If I can comment now, I'll go ahead and do so.
All right.
You know, I'm going to be frank here. I think that this is like, you know, Councilmember Bates is running for mayor, and I think this is a waste of the board's time. I think it's a political ploy on his part to signal to voters that to a certain constituency that he is opposed to rent control. He's very vocal about that. He's opposed to the rent program. His comments during city council make it clear that he doesn't really spend the time even understanding how our ordinance works. So I think he's putting an undue burden on this board, and more importantly, the staff, to consider a recommendation that ultimately we don't have any power over. We can make any recommendation we want, but ultimately this goes to city council. And so I feel protective of the rent staff's time. And I feel frustrated that this is the route that Councilmember Bates is going, because he himself can put an item on the agenda for city council if he wants to. So I suggest that we just make no recommendation. We don't make staff spend their time researching this, and we just let it be. And if Councilmember Bates wants to bring it to council, I think that he does not want to go to council and say that he wants to end the eviction moratorium. He wants us to do the dirty work for him, and I don't appreciate using the board in that way.
All right, thank you. Now I'm going to go back to Mr. Vasilis.
Yeah, I guess I've got a question is, does the city council, what authority does the city council have to get involved in these types of evictions with Measure L? I guess that's directed towards either Mr. McLaughlin or Mr. Oceanuga.
Whomever would like to answer that, but let's first start with Mr. Oceanuga, because he's looking at it from our perspective.
Well, I'm actually going to defer to the city attorney's office on this, because it's their authority they're asserting. So,
all right, then let's go to Ms. McLaughlin.
Well, and I'm going to have to say I don't have enough knowledge about this. I'm just the messenger on this, and I have not the expert on the rent ordinances, so.
Well,
Sorry
and these
about
are,
that.
Okay, so let, board member Vasilas, can you repeat that question again?
Can you describe the authority the city council has, if any, to enact an urgency ordinance that has to deal with these certain types of evictions?
Oh, yeah, so it's just their police powers. And so just as a city inherently, the city has particular police powers. And where especially it's at its highest where there's a public health issue. And because of COVID, because the obvious public health issue was there, the city is able to do various things. One of those things is a moratorium, a temporary suspension on evictions, rents, et cetera. And you may remember this, I'm not sure if you do, but recall in 2015, when the city council was considering rent control, it actually enacted a moratorium on rent increases and evictions. It was a short one, but it used that same police power that's given by the state, and it's inherent in our charter. And so, yeah, the city council can certainly do that.
So the city council has the authority to enact temporary rent freezes then?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, because I had a hard time last council meeting when our vice chair publicly spoke and as a rent board member and lobbied the city council saying that the only thing that they could do was put it on the ballot. So is that incorrect?
Well, if you want to, well, I'm not sure in terms of that comment, because I don't know what context it occurred in. I can't really answer specifically that question, but I can say that this is our measure, our ordinance is a voter initiative, which means no one can change it except the voters, not even the city council. So if the city council were to pass an ordinance that permanently changed our rent ordinance, that would be unlawful. But they can suspend provisions because it's temporary in nature and it's there to address public health issues. They can do that. And then of course they can put things on the ballot to get the voters to change whatever they like.
Yeah, so I find it a little frustrating to say that's a waste of time, because I think this information could have been very helpful if brought to the city council last week when they voted on it. So please don't disrespect Nat Bates for bringing something just for discussion. It's not a whole lot of time. And the data that would be very interesting in knowing, which is what I asked earlier, is how many of these evictions happen, right? So if we're preventing people from moving back into their own house and the data shows that that's less than 20, maybe 10 a year, is that really causing a crisis? Is that causing a health crisis? Is it worthwhile? Is it a good use of an emergency ordinance?
I see that there's also another hand up. Mr. Vasilis, did you want to continue on with what you were saying?
I think I made my point.
All right, I'm going to interrupt for just a moment, if I may, because there's a point of clarification, Mr. Oshanuga. Who is the Director of Emergency Services and where does he come from?
And so the Director of Emergency Services under our municipal code is the city manager. And then the city manager has certain people working under themselves. And that power is an emergency power, and it's invoked during certain times of crises like the pandemic. And so the original director was, I can't remember the past city manager's name.
Laura Steinman.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Steinman. She was.
All righty, thank you. Now we have Ms. Johnson.
So, I mean, whether it's a waste of time or not, it's still in bad conscience, you know, because even if it's maybe fewer than 10 or fewer than 20 families displaced, one family being displaced is too many, because we already have thousands of home, you know, senior citizens, disabled people, families being displaced. All, you know, it's just way out of hand. So even one family is too many.
All right, thank you.
Real quick, Chair Finley, I just want to mention that I do have some data on owner move-ins. In 2018-19, just for a little perspective, there were 14 owner move-ins. And in
Mr. Traylor, we can't hear you, please.
Okay, in 2008, in 2018-19, there were 14 owner move-ins. In 2019-20, there were 32 owner move-ins annually. And in 2020-21, there were 13. just for comparison's sake.
Okay. And from what I can tell, if I'm reading this correctly, I'm looking at ordinance 02-21, the first COVID ordinance that stopped evictions happened in, the city council approved it on April 7th, 2020. So that gives your figures, because that's when it started. So that validates your figures. Mr. Vasilis.
Yeah, I just have a
You're-
quick comment. I mean, I understand not wanting to displace anyone, but there are also families and owners of houses that also need places to live, and they're being prevented from moving into a house they may own with this ordinance.
I don't see any other hands, and I'm going to go back to what I said in the very beginning. Yes, we are concerned, but I don't see that this is an issue where as a rent board, we should take any stance at all. As individuals, certainly that's private, but as a rent board, we were not part of this process. For us to give any kind of a recommendation is quite frankly gratuitous and a little, from my perspective, inappropriate, I think is the kindest thing I can say at this point. But that's my 2 cents worth. Michael, is your hand back up again?
Yeah, just to clarify, I mean, I think the takeaway for me is we've come to the conclusion that the city council does have the authority to enact this urgency order. I think that is very helpful personally.
Apparently they do, yes, and
Okay.
have been. And from what I can see, I've got, I think 9 or 10 different supplements to the original order, changes, amendments. You know, it's been an ongoing process as they get more data, I suppose. We've never seen the data, but again, we've never been involved in this. Okay. Now, if we have no one, and we will come back to more discussion, so it's not over from our perspective, but Cynthia, do we have speakers on this item?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you said we do, 14 or
13.
13.
Okay, so as mentioned
There
before,
should be
go ahead.
5 or 6 of them. About 5 or 6 of the speakers.
Yeah, the thing is that one of the ladies who's on here, she actually sent me a whole list of people. And
I'm sorry, say that again.
I was
Cynthia?
talking to Fred that one of the ladies that's on the list, Patricia, she sent me a list of people. So I don't know if she might be, maybe they're with her. I'm not sure. So we can call their name and see.
All right, well, if you're ready, let's
We're ready.
start.
Let me,
Fred, did
go
you have
ahead.
anything else you wanted you wanted to say on this? Mr. Tran?
No, I was just trying to help coordinate the speakers with
Thank you.
I know so I'm just trying to keep up to date with it.
Okay, 1 second. Let me change the so I have to hold on 1 second.
So you said it would be a minute and a half.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm changing the time.
Okay.
And then the other one would be 3 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen now. All right, so the first speaker is Elsa Stevens. Elsa Stevens.
I don't see Elsa on the attendee list, but there is a 510-812-5366 number.
Yeah, I don't see her number on there. Okay.
Cindy, just quickly, is it supposed to be a minute 50 seconds or a minute and a half?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, no worries.
my bad. Let me change it. Stop share. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Thank you. Sometimes these things, I'm typing it in there. Okay, so we're gonna make it, so it's gonna be one. Yeah, we keep going to 150. This thing keep going to 150, so I don't know. Can we just leave it at 150?
Would it let you enter 90 seconds instead of
Let
a
me
minute 50
Yeah,
seconds?
let me do that. Let me do that.
Aha.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm impressed.
Okay, let me try that. Let me cancel that one. Let me do this one. 0, 0, 90 seconds. Hold on. No. I'm trying to do it, you guys. Bear with me. 90 seconds. Let me do it. It's only going to 59. So what you guys want to do is not letting me, the timer is, I could do it, I could try to just do it, but it's not letting me go to 90 seconds. It's just letting me do 59, 60.
In that case, do you
I
have
can do a minute.
a timing device where you can actually just do say, I will call time at a minute and a half?
Yeah, let me try that. I was just trying to put it on the screen. Sorry.
Right.
This
Well,
system.
that makes sense, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Okay. All right. Let me try it on my phone then. Sorry, you guys.
Yeah.
Clock.
Yeah, you've got a stopwatch or a timer on your phone.
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
You can always set it to a minute on the screen and then hit the timer
From my
on
timer
the screen once your phone hits, drops down so that the speaker will know that they're running out of time if you want to do it that way.
Okay. Well, this is what we're gonna do here because even my phone won't do that. It's crazy. Okay, because it only go up to 59 seconds.
Or can we just possibly give them the 2 minutes each?
I second 2 minutes.
Okay.
It's just not letting me in these clocks and stuff. It's just saying 59. It's not giving me 90 seconds.
You could
All right,
just, you
then
could
then
just
go to the two, Mr. Oshanuga.
Yeah,
I
I was
see you.
I was gonna suggest you can just put the 1 minute and 50 seconds on and then stop it when there's 20 seconds left.
Okay, I'll do that. Sorry about that. Yeah, these clocks and stuff, they're only giving you, the program is only giving you so much. It's not-
Okay.
Okay,
Well, I
so
think-
I'll do that. I'll try to catch it right then.
Okie dokie.
All right. Okay. So the first speaker, like I mentioned, is Elsa. She's not present, right? Okay. So the next speaker is Rosa Vilgard.
I don't see Rosa as well.
Okay. There's the next speaker is Asian Carmona.
I don't see Asiana.
Okay. The next speaker is Irene Gonzalez.
Irene Gonzalez is not present.
So since there are fewer speakers, would it be easier for them to get 2 minutes?
They can. The next speaker is Saluma.
She's present.
She's present. Okay. You want me to change it to 2 minutes? And I believe, I'm not sure, but in case they need, you can put them on and just see if they need interpretation. If so, then we'll have to change it anyway.
Well,
Hello?
¿Sí me escuchan?
Okay, 1 second. Let me change your time then. 1 second. She speaks Spanish. Okay. She get 3 minutes. Okay, you can go ahead.
Ok, hola, mi nombre es Zulma Navarrete. Yo soy del programa ACE y yo estoy llamando porque yo estoy pidiendo encarecidamente, por favor, que si no remuevan la, la ayuda del moratorio, ya que muchos seríamos afectados. Yo soy una de las que serían afectadas si retiran esa ayuda, ya que yo estoy siendo por ser desalojada porque el dueño del apartamento está tratando de sacarnos. Entonces,
Excuse me, where is the interpreter?
I don't know. We're not required to provide interpretations, right, Charles?
You're not, but you typically, you can pause the time, please.
Patricia Aguilar, ¿puede ser mi intérprete?
Yeah, typically the speaker has their own interpreter, so the speaker gets time to speak, and then the interpreter, their translator will come on, usually a family member or friend, and repeat what the speaker said.
I'll just intercept. She just mentioned that she does have an interpreter, that her name is Patricia.
Okay.
Okay, go
My
for
apologies for interrupting. I just didn't want her to talk for 3 minutes and then not have any idea what she said.
Yes.
Go
ahead.
Okay, y yo estoy pidiendo...
Bueno, ¿me pueden escuchar? Can you listen to me?
We hear you.
Okay, I'm the interpreter for Swilma. I'm sorry, no one called me. I told her to say that Patricia, I'm in line, and I got in line to interpret interpret whatever she's saying. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we, Cindy, can you just start the time over? Let the speaker start again. And then when the speaker is finished, the interpreter can read off what was said.
All right. Okay, are you ready? She's ready?
Ya puede empezar, Swilma, otra vez.
Sí, mi nombre es Zulma Navarrete y soy miembro de ACE. Yo soy una de las personas que seríamos afectadas si quitan el moratorio, ya
Un
que
momentito, Swilma, pare. My name is Wilma Navarrete, and I will be one of the persons that will be affected if they remove the eviction moratorium. Continúe.
ya que yo he sido demandada para desalojo porque el dueño no ha querido esperar a la ayuda que ofreció el Estado.
And I'm in process to be evicted because the landlord didn't want to wait for the assistance, the rent assistance for the government. So he already put papers I'm in process to be evicted. Adelante.
Ya que yo estoy esperando orden de la corte para presentarme para esa demanda. Y si ellos levantan esa orden del moratorio, muchos quedaríamos desamparados y estaríamos al acecho de ellos para desalojarnos.
And basically, if this moratorium goes away, me and a lot of people, we're going to be in process to be evicted and right away because then there's no protections for us.
Ya que han tardado mucho en responder, yo tengo más de 1 año esperando la respuesta y Milano no quiere esperar más. Él quiere sacarme lo antes posible del apartamento. ¿A dónde iría a dar yo con mi familia? Por favor, pongan más tiempo para el moratorio, no lo quiten, tengan corazón, por favor.
Okay, and I please ask to have the heart to not to continue with the moratorium because I've been waiting for more than a year to receive this money and my landlord doesn't want to wait anymore.
Ellos solo quieren ganar más dinero y no les importa sacar la gente a la calle. No queremos ser unos más los de las estadísticas de andar en la calle vagando o vivir en carro.
Okay, parallel, and they don't care, the landlord doesn't care that me and my family, we're gonna end up homeless and I don't have anywhere to go.
Tengo 3 hijos y ellos preguntan qué va a suceder si nos vamos a la calle. Yo lo único que les pido, por favor, no quiten el moratorio. Hay mucha gente que quedaría en la calle, muchos ancianos, y como yo en mi persona, mi familia estaríamos batallando para sobrevivir en la calle.
Okay, so if that happens, then me and my 3 children will end up in the streets, and not only me, other senior people and a lot of people will end up in the streets. So please, I request that continue with the moratorium. Don't let it stop, because then we are in danger to end up in the streets.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Maria Diaz.
Yes, I'm also interpreter for her.
Okay, she's present then. Okay. You can go ahead.
Actually, I don't see
Oh, you
her
don't see her?
attendee list. She was on earlier, but unless she 510-812-5366.
No, that's not her. Okay. Patricia, is she with you?
No, we are in different phones, so probably I'm gonna try to reach her right now. In the meantime, you call other people.
Well, we have to get permission if we can recall her. Is that okay with you, board member, Chair Finley?
Yes, but let's go ahead to the next speaker, and then when she's available, then we'll fit her back in.
Okay, the next speaker
Thank
is
you.
Hannah Gonzalez.
Yes, that's another person that I need to interpret her.
Okay, we see her on the line.
Ana, ¿está ahí?
Sí.
Okay, she's there. Go ahead.
Buenas tardes a todos. ¿Me escucha?
Sí.
Sí. Ok. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Ana González. Soy miembro de ACE. Vivo acá en Richmond, California, desde hace 13 años.
Okay. Espere ahí. My name is Ana Gonzalez. I live in Richmond since 13 years ago, and I'm a member of ACE. Siga.
El motivo de estar acá en esta llamada es para pedirles que por favor apoyen la moratoria, que no la quiten todavía.
My reason to be here is because I want to please ask you to not stop this moratorium. We need it. Please continue with this.
Porque todavía no hay trabajos, todos no están los trabajos todavía, no hay suficiente trabajo ahorita porque la pandemia todavía no ha terminado.
Okay, because right now, if you see, there is not enough jobs. The pandemic is still not gone totally, and it's not enough jobs for everybody. Continúe.
Y no queremos que vaya a haber desalojos porque tenemos niños y nosotros no tenemos trabajo suficiente. Apenas ajustamos a pagar media renta. Y si quitan la moratoria, los van a aumentar demasiado. Entonces, queremos que apoyen la moratoria y el desalojo, que no hayan desalojos.
Okay, she's asking that please don't let this to be stopped because we have children, and also because right now we can hardly pay sometimes half of our rent. And if you stop this, they're going to increase more the rent. The rent is going to go more higher. And right now it's not enough. It's not enough money to pay.
Porque necesitamos que esté la moratoria porque está muy caro todo lo que son víveres de comida. Todo lo que se compra en comida para nuestros hijos y nosotros, pues está muy carísimo. El galón de leche en las tiendas aquí cerca vale $8. Entonces, no podemos pagar más de lo que estamos pagando. Entonces,
Okay.
por eso...
Ana, la voy a parar tantito. So we need help because the milk and groceries are very expensive. A gallon of milk right now is more than $8 or more.
Thank
Please
you.
don't let this happen because that way our children and families.
Thank you.
Y por eso estoy acá.
And that's why I'm
Y
here.
The
Thank
time
you.
is expired. Thank you.
Ya terminó el tiempo, Ana.
Thank you. The next person is Raul Vasquez. I don't see him on there either.
Oh,
Okay, the next person is Elda Fontenot.
she's present.
She's present.
Correct.
Okay. You see her?
Yeah, I do.
I'm not sure if she needs translation.
She spoke earlier.
Oh, that's
so-
right. She spoke. That's right. She did speak earlier. Okay, so let me get the other time.
Just for clarity, are you still at the point where we're going to have to set this then for a minute and 50 seconds or whatever you said?
Well, we didn't have that many people that spoke. I didn't know if you wanted to just do 2 minutes because not everybody, or what you want to do, or 1 minute. The thing is that we didn't have as many speakers as we thought. So I don't know.
Okay, well,
I mean, we did
think-
have speakers, but they weren't not present. So I don't know how you want to proceed.
Well, unfortunately, now we're changing it in the middle, so it's not as fair as it should be. But I think, Mr. Oceanuga, didn't you say that we could set it for a minute and 50 and tell them when it's over? So it would be at a minute and
Yes, and for the individuals who require interpreters, they get a total of 3 minutes for the.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Okay, no problem.
okay, so it's still a minute and a half. Thank you.
Okay, sure, no problem. Got it.
Okay, you may speak.
Is she on?
She's on. I've been requesting for her to unmute.
Please let her know that we will be cutting her time when it says when it only gives us a minute and a half of speaking time.
Mhm.
So 20 seconds will not be available to her.
Elda?
20 seconds on the clock. Okay.
Is she there?
She's there, but not speaking.
Would you like to go to the next person?
Elda?
Please let her know that we will come back to her when she's actually available to us. And then go to the next speaker if you can.
Next speaker is Sam
Okay.
Lewis.
Yes,
He's
Sam
not
Lewis.
independent.
He's not on the line.
I don't see him.
Okay, the next speaker is Blanca Ratano.
I don't see Blanca.
Okay, the next, I see Juana. The next speaker is Juana. So let me pull up the other just in case.
Okay.
Good evening, Juana. Do you need?
Hola.
Oh, she needs translation. Okay, so let me share my screen with that.
Okay, I can translate for her too.
Okay, sure. Let me pull up the 3-minute timer. Okay, you can go
Puede
ahead.
hablar.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Juana Trejo.
Good afternoon, my name is Juana Trejo.
Tengo un caso con ustedes
I have a case with you guys.
y a mí me gustaría que siguieran el programa porque nos afectaría a muchas personas y más los latinos.
And I wish that this continue the program of moratorium because this is affecting a lot of Latinos here in Richmond.
Sí, porque es muy alta la cantidad de las rentas y tenemos poco trabajo y no
Because
podemos
pagar.
Because the rent is too high and we don't have enough money to pay these high rents.
Y la mayoría tenemos niños y qué vamos a hacer en la calle. Tanta gente va a estar en la calle por no poder pagar la renta.
And the majority, we have children. And what are we going to do with the children? We're going to end up in the streets. We don't have money to pay the rent.
Y a mí me gustaría que siguiéramos unidos y todos apoyar el programa.
And I hope that we will all together and continue supporting this program.
Y porque yo estoy en un caso de lo del control de renta, me querían subir mucho de renta y pues con el programa me está ayudando a no subir tanto mi precio de renta porque no puedo pagarlo yo.
And I'm in case because my rent went too high and wants to get really high. And this is been really helping me to continue.
Y muchas personas están en mi lugar, no nomás yo, habemos varias personas que estamos en este caso.
And there's a lot of people that are in this kind of cases, not only me.
Y queremos unirnos todos juntos para apoyar el programa, para que siga todavía este programa.
And we want to be all together to continue with this moratorium. We really need it.
Y muchas gracias por apoyarnos.
And thank you for the support that you give us.
Es todo, que pasen buena tarde. Gracias.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next person is Alana Clark. So let me pull up the other one.
Hi, can you hear me?
1 second, 1 second. I was able to change it to 1:30, you guys. Yay. Okay, let me share my screen. Yes, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
All right, first of all, given how much you guys charge us for translations, translators, and interpreters, you should be providing interpretation for these people. Richmond is more than half Latino. This is ridiculous. You already have a lot of bilingual staff. So my vote on that score is please get it together. Now, for H2, it doesn't matter what, if anything, the rent board recommends. We all know how city council is going to vote. So there will be very little at stake. That being said, it is not inappropriate for council members to ask for a discussion about a controversial regulation in housing. This is your area of expertise. The rent program has data at its fingertips. Even if you don't want to give a recommendation, you should at least make your resources available to the city council. And I've sent you all an article by the Washington Post about what happens when eviction moratoriums have ended in other parts of the country. It's actually very informative. And so you don't have to pander to these people who are fear mongering everybody. Read the article. It's really good. And you can put your awarded funds towards rental assistance to keep people housed. That's your mandate. Go for it. Thank you.
So that was the last speaker.
Now, do we have any of the speakers that had signed up that kind of got lost on the way? Have any of them come back into our?
I don't see them. Do you see them, Fred? I don't see them returning.
Okay.
I don't.
So we're clear then.
Yes, we're clear. That was the last speaker.
All righty, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, let's go back to the board and to staff. Staff, do you have any further recommendations or anything that you want to add here before I open it to the board? All right, hearing none, let's go back to the board. Board members, do you have anything else that you would like to add to this discussion or any other questions that might have come to the fore? All right.
Yes, I do, Chair. I don't know if you see my hand raised.
No, I do now, though. Thank you, Ms. Mishik. Go ahead.
So this is actually a question directed at staff. So is it the case that if a council member reaches out to rent program staff and asks for data, that the rent program, around, for instance, eviction rates, the sort of data that's come up, that the rent program will not provide it to council members?
Oh, no.
Because it seems,
No, sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead. Sorry,
Mr. Traylor,
Nick, I'm going to be annoying and ask you to come closer to the mic. Sorry.
Yeah, so if a council member or a city staff asked us for data on evictions that we had available, we would definitely provide it. If
So
they
it
were
is-
asking, I'm sorry.
So it's not the case that any council member that the program is withholding data, or that if a council member comes to the rent program and asks for data, that's within their rights to do.
Yes.
And Mike, I add something there, although I'm certainly not staff. We do a monthly report that has the data on evictions, on how many people we counsel on it's all there. And then we do a yearly report that summarizes everything that we've done for the year. And it's always available not only to staff and to council members, but to the public. So there aren't a whole lot of surprises in terms of what is provided here. If anything, we're probably one of the most transparent operations within the city framework.
So then because I misunderstand, there have been comments made that, the intention of this is simply for council member Bates to get this sort of information from the rent board. Again, I would reiterate that if that's the case, it appears that the rent board does not need to make a recommendation here. If the council member wants information in this regard, and then to write an agenda report that he can then take to city council, which would be a public document, that's well within his powers to do. I'm not understanding where the rent board's role in helping communicate that information is necessary.
Sorry, is that a question, board member Misha, for staff?
So I guess my question is there anything additive the rent staff could do there in order for council member is there anything additive that our recommendation would provide the council member that is not just information council member Bates could get himself by reaching out to staff?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted information about our services or our data, our eviction data, you certainly could reach out to us. Any city council member, frankly, any member of the public can do that. When it comes to city staff or city council, it's a bit different. The rules are a little different. We can share information a little bit easier without having to go through all the Public Records Act request stuff. So yes, it's certainly within his prerogative to find out as much as he wants to about our data or about eviction data in Richmond. But even if a city council member does receive our data, you have to analyze that data. You have to make something out of it. And it's difficult to analyze the eviction data that we do have because, for example, while the eviction moratorium has been in place, well, you can see that there's been fewer owner move-ins filed, which is kind of expected. So I guess for me, the real question is not necessarily about our data. It's probably more about whether or not the emergency order still needs to be in place, and that the moratorium is tied to the emergency order. The whole point of it is to prevent displacement, to prevent the spread of the virus. So, and that's what the emergency order is trying to achieve as well. So I guess the question is, are we at a point that during the pandemic where the emergency order needs to be reconsidered as well? So, but that's something that requires obviously study on the part of the city.
All right, Mr. Vasilis.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile. I think that in this case, the data is very simple since we're dealing with just 20. I think in a case that might be more complicated, such as changing the AGA, there's a bigger spectrum of data that might need to be analyzed. And I think for a city council to know what to ask for is kind of asking a lot of them. So I think it is useful. And I also think, just in terms of clarification, we learned a lot, and I believe Ms. McLaughlin learned a lot tonight, or just learned that, the city council does in fact apparently have the authority to enact this, which is the most important thing, because if they didn't, we should be making a recommendation because they would be acting outside of their authority. So I think having these discussions is helpful. I think it's also helpful for the callers. I don't think the callers, they hear eviction moratorium, I'm not so sure they understood what eviction moratorium we have in place, and that we're only talking about owner move-ins here, which is, as we said, averaging about 20 per year. So just information is key. And I think, for the callers that listen in and understand that it just doesn't have to do with rents, it doesn't have to do with non-payment of rent. This is strictly owner move-in is important information to put out there.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to raise my hand. I have to go back to my original statement on this, is that we have never had any standing in this discussion. We've never been a part of any of the questions or the information or the amendments or since 2020. And now we're being asked we're being asked for a recommendation to the two bodies, the city council and the director of emergency services, whereas they've had access to us the whole time, and we're not involved in this. We have not been. And for us to make any kind of a decision without going through the entire package to understand what we're talking about, again, there have been 10 different revisions through these last years. We're not the decision makers here. We've never been a party to this process. I don't understand why we're even being asked at this point to bring to bear what the rent board means. I think most of the people who are even speaking tonight thinks that we're decision makers here, and we're not. Our decision has nothing to do with the decision or our recommendation has nothing to do with what they're going to do as a council. And I don't know why we're being asked to participate. And I don't think that we should. I don't think that that's our role, to get involved in something that's already on the books, been cooking for 2.5 years. And now we're supposed to say something. We don't even know what the rest of these things have to be. We learned our lesson, I think, when it came to one of our last meetings, when we tried to change, and we did to a point, our own ordinances, our own rules, let alone to insert ourselves in something that we know nothing about and have never been a party to. So that's my statement. Now, Mr. Vasilis, your hand is still up. Did you want to continue?
Yeah, I would like to add something to that. I think the situation is a little different than it has been, because in 2020, we had federal, state, and county eviction moratoriums. Now we don't. We have a city one. And the idea of Measure L is that the rent board is the main authority in these types of evictions, because they are not state evictions. Owner move-in and a number of the other ones are specific to Measure L. And without a county moratorium or a state moratorium or above, I don't think it's that clear. And I think we gained that clarity tonight. So I think it is important that we're talking about it, at least making a recommendation to city council, maybe not so much, because they can do what they want. But I think it's important that we discuss this.
And I'm pleased for the discussion, but again, I think it's way too late and we don't have enough information nor should we. Okay. Ms. Connor.
I think what I'm going to say is probably a duplicate of what other people have said, but I do want to point out that, you know, our task is contained in the code. The ordinance tells us that, you know, the role of the rent board is to do A, B, C, and D. And those items don't specifically include or exclude making recommendations to the city council. And I'm sure that I'm on the opposite side of a lot of issues with some of my fellow board members, but I do feel that the director of emergency services made decisions some years ago about how best to protect the residents of Richmond. That person, whoever that's standing in that role, hasn't made a change, despite what may in fact be a change in health outcome circumstances, transmission rates, whatever. And so it does seem like cart before the horse to ask us to make a recommendation when the information is public for anyone to review and analyze. And that may be the first step for Ms. McLaughlin in her efforts to provide support to the city council would be to, request some of that information so that it better frames what we are doing and what we can do and what our role is and how we can help or clarify. But I agree with Board Member Vasilas that it's important for us to have these conversations. I mean, our constituents are these people. They are the people, they're the residents of Richmond. They're renters, they're property owners, they're residential housing providers, and they should have a forum where they can come and say, hey, I think we should do that, or hey, I think we shouldn't do that. And this is a good place for that, because maybe it's an opportunity for them to express themselves in a different context at a different time. So I don't think that we've wasted our time. I'm happy that we had this conversation, and hopefully this was helpful for Ms. McLaughlin and will be helpful for both the Director of Emergency Services and the City Council to consider.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, in that case, would anyone like to make a motion?
It looks like Heather has her hand up.
I'm sorry, dear.
Heather has her hand up. Heather McLaughlin.
And maybe it was premature.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Heather, you weren't on my screen. Please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank you all very much for your time. No matter what you decide, it was helpful for me to get the background and the information that you all provided. I'm the new kid on the block, so maybe some of my questions were a little bit odd, but I appreciate your thoughtfulness and consideration.
Thank you. Now, am I missing anyone else? Please. Cynthia, am I missing anyone?
I don't see anyone else's hands up.
All righty. I will entertain a motion.
I have a question, Chair.
Certainly.
If we decide we don't want to make a motion, like we don't want to make any recommendation, what do we do?
Mr. Oceanuga, in that case, would we have a motion that we have chosen not to make any kind of a recommendation?
Yeah, if you want to make a statement, if you want to have the council member who put this item forward know your position, which is you're not making any recommendation, you can certainly make that motion. Your other option is just not to make any motion at all on this item, and this item would just be it. It would be the board would take, the minutes would read that the board took no action on the item.
Okay, so that is also an option then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that I will ask for a motion one more time. And in the case that no one offers one, we will consider the issue to be is moot the correct word, Charles?
Yeah, I don't know what the correct word would be on that point, but I
or that no decision was taken.
Received. The board received the information. Would that be it? Received? No.
I'm sorry. Say again.
Would it be received that you guys received it? I don't know.
Yeah, it would simply be you took no action. But what I would, what I would probably suggest is you check in with City Attorney McLaughlin to see what the preference is. Perhaps the council members looking for some sort of statement, either that be, if you're choosing not to give a recommendation, perhaps a council member would be better served if you make that affirmative statement that you are not giving a recommendation on this item.
Okay. Ms. McLaughlin, do you want to say anything about that at all?
We will be happy with whatever you do. You can either take no action at all or make a motion. Either way is fine.
Okay.
Here's Board Member Johnson, her hand's up. Chair
And I
Finley.
think that if we decide to take no action, that's how it should read, that the board made the decision to take no action on the item. Is that all right with everybody? Is that, and I see Ms. Johnson, your hand is up, dear.
I was gonna make a motion.
Okay.
So I make a motion, I move that we recommend that the city council consider the eviction moratorium and the three options that were included.
Wait. I would have to have some clarification there. We have three options that they gave us. You want them to take all three of them?
So how do I?
One was to terminate the moratorium. The second was to amend the moratorium. And the third was to make no changes. I mean, they kind of nullify each other, don't they?
Okay, so the motion that would be to recommend the city council consider the eviction moratorium and option 3, make no changes.
Mr. Oshanuga, I'm getting a little caught up in too many words here.
Go
ahead.
Yes, just to clarify, it sounds like Board Member Johnson is making a motion to recommend that the board recommend the city council make no changes to the current moratorium. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's different. That's saying make no changes as opposed to we have made no decision. We are not, we have taken no action on the item.
That's correct. That would be an affirmative position by the board to say, do not make a change to this moratorium.
Okay. Now, is that what you're trying to say, Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, so it is to make no changes. All right. Now, is there a second for the motion? All right, since we're not hearing a second, does anyone else want to make a motion?
May I make a motion, Chair?
Yes.
I move that we issue no recommendation on this item as a board to the city council.
Okay, so no recommendation is the same as no action. All right, just for, again,
Well,
I'm
that-
not
just to
trying to
clarify,
amend your
we
motion. I'm just trying to understand it. So we're
Yeah,
all on the same
I'm
page.
recommending that we make no recommendation on action that city council should take.
Okay, all right. That's very clear. Thank you. All right, now is someone going to second that motion? I'll second the motion. May we have a vote, please?
So I'm sorry, we're voting on the second motion?
Yes, because there was no one who made a second to your motion, so it failed. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna announce that the first motion that Board Member Johnson made, it failed because of a lack of a second.
Correct. All right, so now there's a new motion on the floor, and I have seconded.
So now we take.
Seconded it. All right, now, may we have a vote on that, please?
Yes. Board Member Connor.
No.
Board Member Johnson.
No.
Board Member Vasilis.
No.
Vice Chair Masek.
Yes.
Chair Finley.
Yes.
Motion fails with Board Member Connor voting no, Board Member Johnson voting no, and Board Member Basilos voting no.
Okay. Now, does anyone else want to make a motion? Am I missing anybody? In that case, Mr. Oshanuga, again, I want to be clear on this. The board took no action on the item. Is that correct? Correct way to say it?
Yeah, the minutes are going to reflect that the board reached, yes, the minutes going to reflect that these votes were taken, they failed, so the board took no action on the item. And the item just,
okay.
The item, I suppose the item fails, or however you want to term that. But we'll be sure
All right.
to make clear in the minutes what happened.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. All right. In that case, I think that we're finished with this item. May we have the reports of officers, please? And Cynthia, I know that's your job, but I went there because you were busy.
So
It's okay, it's both of our jobs, so. Nick will,
you do it better than I
present
do, hon, trust me.
Nick will present
Mr. Traylor.
item I for reports of officers.
Thank you.
all right, I have the pleasure of introducing Monica Bejarano, who is our Senior Management Analyst, and she would like to do a short report of officers today. You're mute.
Sorry about that. Hello, all. So for today's report, I actually would have the pleasure to introduce you to two new rent program services analysts. We have John Adams and Edward Argenial. They were hired just about 2 weeks ago, August 1st to be exact. So we are very happy to have them join our rent program team to assist with counseling the public regarding the ordinance. And yeah, they've been great so far. They've been training a lot. We've been very busy. So yeah, I'd like to take this time so that they can also introduce themselves to you all, to the board. So John, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. My name's John, and I've worked for the city for 7 years in the library department, and I transferred over to rent. And it's been a real pleasure. I'm real happy to be here, and it was great discussion you guys had, so good job. And yeah, and it's nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, Edward, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Edward Arsenal. I'm new to the team, new to the city of Richmond. I'm from Martinez, and I'm currently pursuing my education at Cal State East Bay, and really excited for the opportunity here, and it's a pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you. Glad that you could join us.
And that is going to be it for the report of officers. And I hope everybody has a great evening, and thank you for everyone's patience at today's board meeting.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. And this board, this meeting of the rent board is closing at 7:14 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Cynthia.